organization starts with an idea, but very few of them turn that idea into an identity. We are here to talk with ansrsource, who has successfully done that for the last 20 years. We are going to talk to the CEO of ansrsource, Rajiv Narayana, and we are going to hear from Katie Trotta, who is the head of client experience at ansrsource. Rajiv, how has ansrsource evolved over the last 20 years from writing instructor materials to supporting the full range of learning optimization?
Well, I think you put it well, talking about the journey from 20 years ago being quite simple, focusing on effective, accessible, and affordable education. The beauty of the business that we're in is that learning from a human perspective doesn't fundamentally change. Learning is innate. It's something that we're all born with the capability to do, and in today's day and age, we just have different tools and methods by which we can learn. The real challenge in our industry right now is to try to bring effective learning practices to the global population, to create opportunity to thrive for people anywhere and everywhere. And to do that, it has to be scalable. And to be scalable, it has to be both high quality and it has to be affordable and accessible. That sounds simple, but it's actually a massive challenge. And that is what our company was born to do, and that's what our company is evolving to do. So if we look back over 20 years, we started in 2003 with a very simple premise. Can we scale assessment? And we proved that we could. Then from there, it went into a lot of different types of learning, a lot of different types of technology. But if you look at our mission and our vision and what we need to do to realize that, it's more or less the same today. However, we have to be agile and we have to be able to change with the times. So when we look at the objective of ansrsource and when we look at the identity and culture of the company, it's really about managing change, and it's about helping not just our company evolve to meet that challenge, but helping learners be able to have the tools by which to be able to meet the moment.
Managing change. I love that you said that. Say more. How does that relate to learning?
When we look at, this is an interesting thing to explore. When you look at human identity, a lot of our identity has been based in the degrees we get, the jobs that we occupy, and we build our sense of self out of those things.
Yeah.
In today's world, the touchstones that we have are moving. It's not as consistent as it used to be. And so the touchstones that we have are who are we today?
Yeah.
And tomorrow that might change. The skills we need, the job that we occupy, the way that we derive value, all those things can change very quickly today because of the pace of technological change and the pace, frankly, of cultural change. And so because of that, there's never been a time of more chaos or tumult for human beings than there is now, and that can cause an identity crisis, which we're seeing play out in a lot of different ways. And learning is one of those things that helps you be able to manage those changes. And so our job at ansrsource is to help people thrive in a very volatile and uncertain environment and be able to find opportunities and the skills they need to not only be able to work and provide for themselves, but also be able to achieve a sense of self and identity through that process.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. Katie, from your perspective, what values do partners look for in a learning organization?
First and foremost, partners look for somebody that they can trust. Somebody who does what they say they will do, that they can rely on to deliver something that is very key to their organization, training their employees. So they're looking for somebody who comes in, understands their language, understands their goals, their needs, what they're trying to do, but ultimately who will deliver what they're saying they will deliver. High quality training that is actually tailored to their organization's needs.
High quality training. How does ansrsource enable their partners to deliver just that?
We enable our partners to deliver high quality training by making sure that we understand what high quality training means to our partners first and foremost. So understanding what their business needs are and why they are looking to do training in the first place, understanding what their body of learners, their employees, what they need to learn in order to be successful in that organization. These are the things that we make sure that we understand, internalize, and build into our design plans.
Internalize. I think that's one of the things that ansrsource does really well, is internalizing what matters to the business that we're dealing with. So you lead the team that does all the magic. Why don't you share a little bit more about the secret sauce behind internalizing?
Part of our onboarding process is making sure that not only the team members, the ansrsource team members who will be interacting with the client fully understand the client, but to make sure that everybody within our team who will be working on the training for that client has that same understanding. So we'll spend time with our clients asking them questions as part of the onboarding, making sure that we understand what they're trying to do, how they work, what their key needs are, and then we will do an internal onboarding with our team members to make sure that everybody on that team understands all of those key components. It's a context gathering and sharing that sometimes can seem extensive perhaps, but we have found that it is extremely critical so that we don't just understand what the piece of training is needed for, but the whole environment, the whole ecosystem in which it will live, because that makes it a much higher quality piece of training.
Yeah. Rajiv, how has the 20 years of ansrsource, the part about like understanding the context of our clients, how has that evolved?
Context is extremely important for our clients because the culture inside of the organizations that we work with is very different. We work with global publishers who deliver content to people in a lot of different environments, but usually in an academic setting. We work with associations that have professional members who are trying to upskill within an industry to stay relevant. We work with major corporations who have a competitive imperative and they need to keep their people current with best practices, competitive best practices, sales best practices, leadership best practices in order to meet the moment and keep their competitive position strong. If you look at all the different organizations we work for, there's a lot of different cultural contexts and competitive context and also learner context that we have to be aware of. And so in our work, if we don't actively listen to what our clients are telling us and build a process and a team and a solution that fits with their context, we'll miss the mark. And because learning is innate, the simple elements that make learning work remain consistent. That doesn't mean the process of making learning work for a group of people is easy, right? We all know when we turn off in terms of listening, right? And if something isn't relevant to us, if somebody hasn't listened to us and provided us with something of value, you turn off because our brains are processing engines and we have a very finite and valuable space in there. And so what we choose to use it on has to be something that is meaningful to us in the moment. And if it's not, we turn off. And so in our business, we can lose the audience very quickly if we're not listening. And if we are, that makes the difference between effective learning and a poor experience where people are not paying attention.
How has learning evolved in the last 20 years? You've seen the industry. You've been literally at all the big conferences where education is being talked about, where learning is being talked about. What do you see as the main difference?
A lot of us mark, progress in life by how old we are, or, the different milestones that happen in life. The thing that has kind of made me realize that I'm not young anymore is the fact that I've been with this company for 20 years. But the benefit of being with a company that's in the learning business for 20 years is seeing the ebbs and flows of the industry, the changes that have taken place, and of course the last 20 years have been filled with unprecedented events that in my youth I never thought I would see. And so when we talk about how learning has changed, one interesting thing is that from a human perspective, it really hasn't changed that much. from a methodological and technological perspective, it has changed a lot. And what we've seen over the last 20 years is a lot of discussion around how these traditional methods work. We're not going to change them, and so therefore, we need to make new models fit within this infrastructure that we've built.
Yeah.
That was wrong. Then we, had the hype cycle where we had a lot of different things that happened over the years where people thought adaptive learning is going to be the next big thing, personalized learning, AR, VR, and then now we have Gen AI. Everybody thinks that these things by themselves represents a fundamental change in learning. It does not. What it represents is the ability to provide people with more affordable scale. But if you don't do that in a thoughtful manner, what you're going to end up with is what we ended up with on social media, which is a lot of vapid content.
Yeah.
And that's not what we need in the learning ecosystem. We have an opportunity and we have a threat right now. The opportunity is that we can create more opportunities for more people to thrive, given the tools that we have. We also have the threat of building a lot of things that are more or less meaningless and creating a lot of noise and a lot of chaos for people in a world that is already proliferating with those kinds of things. So we have to be cognizant of the moment that we're in, and so when we talk about the changes that have happened over the last 20 years and how things have evolved, I think more than anything else we're at that inflection point in human history where we have a choice to make. What kind of future do we want, and what role does learning have to play in that? Because right now we are fast getting to a point where we have all the tools to make all our dreams possible, but if we're not careful, we could also realize our nightmares.
Yeah. Katie, from your point of view, how do you see the learner evolving in all of this? Rajiv's point of view of how learning is evolving. What do you see from your point of view as someone who has been in the learning industry for 25 years?
Yes. Innately, learners are learners. But the understanding that learners have now is greater than it was, I would say, 25 years ago when I began in the business. So 25 and even more years ago, most learners accepted what was put in front of them, that there was a process they had to go through to acquire the knowledge, to acquire the skills, and they were willing to just follow the process, accept that this is how learning or training was delivered, and they just had to go through it. The modern learner knows that there are options. They have had opportunities to determine how they prefer learning, and they are not as patient with experiences that are more of a slog to get through, where you just have to do this step, then do this step, and then do this. They want to be able to have that flexibility to say, I know this, I don't know this, this is where I want to spend my time. So that awareness on the part of the learner that they should have options and that they are demanding those options is really how we've seen the learner change.
That's pretty cool. And also, we work with a lot of healthcare companies, for example. And when we think of the healthcare learner, that is a whole, it's a busy learner, the nurses, the medical staff, but they know and understand the importance of learning in that industry. So it is the best way of looking at it as, this is mandatory learning because I need to know, I need to serve my patient better.
I think the healthcare learner is representative of, really an issue that we're seeing across a lot of, high stakes fields where you have people interacting with patients or clients, and the rules of the game have changed. They're under a lot of pressure, but the need for them to learn on the job has never been more significant. And so a lot of the technology and a lot of the methods that are being deployed in these organizations right now were built 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And in today's world, you can't build something 15 years ago for a future that you can't envision, right? And so post-pandemic healthcare in a highly technological world where a lot of the disciplines in healthcare have been decimated because people have, gotten overworked or decided to change, career tracks and things like that. There's a lot of pressure on people now, and to be able to foresee that with methodologies and technologies that were built several years ago is not possible. So we need to iterate and allow for learning systems to change and learning approaches to change in real time. And that's a big challenge, but when we talk about healthcare in particular, what we've heard consistently from our clients is that there's new regulations, there are new technologies, there are new medicines, there are new patient requirements, there are evolving job roles because of technology. And if any of you have been to the doctor recently, you know that, right? As a patient, and you know that from the practitioner perspective because you see them struggling. But what is a learning system that would facilitate a better interaction, in that environment? And that's something that ansrsource is working very hard to address. We are trying to get ourselves in front of technology and in front of these approaches to be able to provide learning in real time to professionals in fields like this. But frankly, that's going to be the call of the day. For human work, the bar is being raised, but with the automation of a lot of tasks and a lot of jobs, a lot of major organizations are starting to look at what can be automated and what requires human skill.
Right.
And the things that require human skill invariably are going to be things that are evolving quickly, that require critical thinking and creativity, and that's going to be a big challenge for learning departments within these organizations to be able to keep people able to provide that value that you want to get, from a human in your organization.
I love that we chose healthcare as one of the focus areas, especially in adult learning, because there's such a big skill gap and the market really needs help. Like, that's a job that's so much needed. In the United States itself, the number of nurses that are needed, the number of healthcare professionals that are needed versus the ones that are available, there's a huge gap, and that's where learning can come in and fill that gap. So a lot of the learning used to happen in-house. The design part of learning used to happen in-house, and a lot of our customers believed that it can only be done in-house. What have you seen in your experience of working with ansrsource for the last 20 years? How has that changed?
Before working at ansrsource, I did work at an organization where we did the majority of learning in-house. And there was that sense that because we did it every day, we did it only for this organization, that we knew best how to do it in that organization's style. And we do encounter a number of clients who initially have that thinking. They have, a mandate or a mission to expand their learning, but they are only thinking that it can be done by expanding their internal teams, which is a barrier for many organizations. So one such large enterprise organization that we encountered, they were referred to us, and they had recently expanded their mission so that they wanted to reach a larger body of learners than what they had previously. And they were of that thinking that everything they had done to date had been done with their in-house team that had been trained in all of their methodology, they had worked at it every day for years upon years. And they were not thinking that there was any other way that they could achieve their levels of quality without continuing that same approach. So they spoke with us, but they were initially hesitant. A few weeks later, they realized that they were running behind on a critical project, that they had committed to delivery dates, their team did not want to fail to deliver, and they needed some help. Because they were a little bit hesitant, they just started by asking us to do some small pieces of the project, to come in and design and develop some interactive learning pieces that would be part of the bigger program. Our team, of course, we engaged with them. We delivered those pieces, and ultimately those pieces helped to enhance the overall whole. And that helped this organization realize that design does not just have to be done in-house, that there is a way to reasonably and with high quality expand their learning design and development team. And that as long as the engagement with that team helps to bring that context so that everybody working on the learning, whether or not they are an in-house employee or part of the ansrsource team, is working with the same understanding, the same context, and the same goal in mind, that it's possible to expand the reach of your training programs, to scale those programs without just relying on building your in-house team.
And I feel like our full-time employees model of learning design helps and enables us to do that, because a lot of learning organizations tend to have freelancers, but freelancers change, and which is where a lot of our customers tend to have this impression of like a learning design company, oh, you must be hiring freelancers, it won't be consistent, it won't be like our in-house people. I think the difference, I feel like after these many years of doing this and watching different vendors, from my perspective, I feel like one of our strength, the reason we are able to onboard, get context, keep context, is because we have full-time dedicated team members for each of the customers that have kind of been in the journey with the customer. When we talk about companies like Hilti, like they understand what their learning philosophy was 7 years ago, our team does, and so they are able to really partner with the learning company, learning team, the global learning team, and say, oh, are you sure this needs to be designed this way? Because 2 years ago, this was a decision that was taken in the business, right? Like having that context, not just of today, but of the evolution of business in some ways enables us to do that.
You're right, Suchi.
Yeah.
So I think it helps us first that when we are bringing in our full-time team members, that we are looking at them to see their knowledge, their capabilities across a range of projects. Yeah. So not just suitable for one specific project, but we are really looking at who are the people who understand the landscape, who are able to flex to different business needs. And then beyond that, making sure that we put those people into the appropriate roles. So who is best suited to work with this client, make sure that they fully understand the context of that client, and internalize it with our team. And then because we do those 2 steps there, that it means that our team members tend to stay with us for quite some time, and we do have that institutional knowledge, institutional in terms of it's our knowledge of our clients, but we have it all within ansrsource. And even with some of our enterprise clients, we might actually have more knowledge than they do, given how much things have been changing in the corporate world.
I love that you said that, and I feel like one of our secret sauce, so to say, is that, right? Like the ability to, and interest. I also love the type of people we hire. They're not regular people. Like, I mean it in the best way, you know what I mean, right? Our team members are quirky, full of curiosity, full of passion for learning. We look for people that, I know why I got hired. Because the only thing I said to the HR was like, I'm very academically oriented, and I come from a teaching background, like my grandparents were teachers. So that made the HR think, like they saw through the passion, not just my technical responses. And I feel like the culture we have created really enables us to be the type of learning company we have become in the last 20 years. What do you think, Rajiv?
Yeah, I think people are the key to an organization like ours. The interesting thing that I've been thinking about as both of you have been talking is the confluence of needs that we see at our clients, and those needs can span from, they understand their business or their place in their industry. They know what they need to do to be competitive. They understand to an extent their culture and their learners and what they want them to learn. But then going back to the internal learning and development idea, when you do that inside of an organization, you end up tactically addressing certain things inside of your organization. You want a sales training, you want a leadership training, you want product training, you want customer experience training, you build all those things, and the best companies will build a journey to bring people through over a period of time so that they become highly effective members of their organization. But inside of an organization, invariably, learning and development is seen as not necessarily a burden, but a cost center, right? And so because of that, a lot of times the different activities are seen as things that you can control for if the company falls on hard times. And then people in our industry will always say, well, in hard times, that's when you invest in learning because then you become more competitive. But then the people who run these organizations say, well, no, this is something that we can cut. But the interesting thing, as we enter a world where in order to leverage human talent as best you can, learning has to be embedded in how you do things every day. That presents an interesting opportunity for an organization like ours who understands the technologies and how to scale learning and also how to optimize learning so that it's as efficient and effective as possible and manage the governance of the learning process. That's something that not a lot of companies are experts at. We are. But our clients are experts in their own businesses. They're experts in their own culture. And we need to listen and learn from that. And then when you form a partnership around those fundamental tenets of what we do well, that's where we can create a learning ecosystem that provides value to an organization where they can actually measure the results in a tangible way. An interesting anecdote about that is that we'll have clients who understand their process, their value, but they're trying to serve 175 million learners. And they can't do that alone. And so the challenge today is certainly one of partnership and ecosystems. And ansrsource is working really, really hard to develop an approach to making that work as effectively as possible.
Yeah. You said optimization of learning. Tell us more about that.
The word optimization, like many words, it's loaded, meaning a lot of people have a lot of assumptions about what optimization means. Optimization from the standpoint of our clients means both in terms of the effectiveness of learning, but also the managing the process of learning. And so, Katie highlighted an example with a institution that we worked with, and we've talked a lot about different clients that we have. But usually, people come to us when the challenge is too great for them to handle it alone. And that can either mean they're not familiar with technologies to be able to, get the result that they want. They're not able to manage the scale that they have in front of them by themselves. They don't have experience with the particular type of learning that they're embarking on, and they need some assistance either from a specialization perspective or from something they want that they have an idea about but they've never built it before. And so when we talk about optimizing learning, we have to manage multiple stakeholders and multiple constraints inside of institutions and organizations that we work with in order for our work to be successful. And so if you think about it as just a generic client relationship, you'll have the buyer, who's somebody who has an objective in mind and they've got a budget to spend. And then you have the learners who need certain things in order to be engaged, in order to get something from the learning. And ultimately the buyer has something to do with why those people are learning those things, but then they have their own objectives and they have their own perspective on the process, and they need to be managed as well. And so at ansrsource, the idea of optimization is managing all of those different stakeholder needs, delivering to them well, managing in a very organized way so that it's predictable for the people who are overseeing the overall project, but that we're delivering measurable results. And then at the end of the day, being aligned with the organization and the learners in a way where we can take responsibility for the outcomes that come out of the learning. And if you do all that well, then everybody views it as a streamlined process, right? If you don't do it well, it's a series of disconnected steps where you can spin a narrative at the end and say, this is what we accomplished, but nobody's really aligned in how it worked, why it worked well, and what the outcomes were. The alignment comes from good governance and optimizing, the approach. And so that's what we mean when we talk about learning governance or learning optimization. It's not the typical optimization nomenclature that you use in technological processes and things like that. It has more to do with the actual definition of a word and what optimization means from the perspective of making things more efficient and making them more effective.
So in other words, would you say looking at the whole end-to-end learning design as a process in an organization and going in and saying where things could be better, whether that's in administration, whether that's in design, to drive the business outcome? Is that the learning optimization engine?
Yes, and it's the, fundamentally it's the reason why you hire a consultant.
Yeah.
Meaning a lot of times, because of the day-to-day that our clients are involved in, it's very difficult for them to see the opportunity to refine their learning process to give them better outcomes. When we come in with the angle that we've worked with a lot of these different types of organizations. We've worked in academic settings and professional settings. We know what's out there, and we can spot very quickly where there are opportunities for improvement. And so that really is our role, is to help optimize how they do these things. And sometimes it takes form in one program, sometimes it takes shape across the entire organization, but that's really been our role as of late.
In a world full of learning design firms, why should a company hire ansrsource?
Authenticity. Our clients always tell us the number one value that they derive from us is authenticity, and that means we are who we say we are. And like you said earlier, we have a lot of curious, passionate, and quirky people, and that bringing together of great minds and 20 years of experience allows for our clients to be able to realize learning goals that they would not be able to realize with any other partner. We are invested in our clients in the long term, and one of our best clients says, we are everything to the clients that we choose to serve. And we've adopted that mantra at ansrsource because it is very, very true. Our return client rate on an annual basis is in 90+%. People want to do business with us, they want to work with us over the long term because they believe in us. So trust and authenticity is our brand.
We get really good reviews on our customer experience. What has been our approach, and why do you think we get the best customer experience as a feedback?
So we get great reviews on our customer experience for a few reasons, one of which we have talked about, how we onboard clients and make sure that we understand the context, because that pervades into everything that we do when we work with those clients. Every decision that we make, if it's guided by our understanding of the client context, it helps us to deliver a better experience. Also, specifically when we receive those customer experience reviews, communication is called out. And that's one of the things that we work really hard at ansrsource. We want to be a transparent organization. That doesn't mean that we will go to our clients and tell them everything we're doing every day. Obviously, that's too much. But making sure that what we're working through, what decisions we're making, even how we're doing on schedule, that all of those things that we are transparent about them with the client, that we're not hiding anything behind a wall. That really helps make the client understand and trust us. And it does help to ensure that we get great customer experience reviews.
So keeping trust at heart.
Absolutely.
Love it. That's the ansrsource way.